In 1943, Lena Horne stood on the most glamorous film set in the world, lit by the best cinematographers money could buy, dressed in gowns designed specifically for her frame, singing with a voice that stopped every person on the soundstage cold. She was under contract to the most powerful studio in Hollywood, and half the country would never see her face. MGM didn't just fail her, they engineered a system to erase her, one that was so precise, so deliberate, that the audience in a theater in Memphis wouldn't even know she'd been in the film they just watched. She wasn't hidden because she lacked talent, she was hidden because she had too much of it. And her skin was the wrong color for the people who decided what America was allowed to see. This is the story of a woman who was simultaneously one of the biggest stars in the country and one of the most invisible. And the cost of that contradiction was something Hollywood never had to answer for. Lena Horne didn't come from nothing. She came from a family that had been fighting since before she was born. Her grandmother, Cora Calhoun Horne, was a graduate of Atlanta University, a founding member of the National Association of Colored Women, a Brooklyn NAACP officer, and a suffragist. When Lena was just 2 years old, Cora enrolled her as a member of the NAACP. The child's photograph ran in the organization's branch bulletin in 1919. Before she could read, Lena Horne was already part of the movement, but the activism came wrapped in instability. Her father, a numbers banker and gambler, left when she was 3. Her mother, an aspiring actress, left not long after. Lena was passed between relatives, companions, and strangers. Brooklyn, Georgia, Atlanta, the Bronx, Harlem. She attended segregated schools in the South, where she was taunted by other black children for being too light-skinned. She didn't fit anywhere. And that feeling of being between worlds, welcomed by none of them fully, would follow her for the rest of her life. When her grandmother died in 1932, Lena was 15. A year later, with the Depression crushing her mother's household, she dropped out of school and auditioned for the Cotton Club chorus line. The club's hiring policy was a blunt instrument of colorism. Performers had to be, in their words, tall, tan, and terrific. Lena fit the mold. She earned $25 a week dancing in revealing costumes before an exclusively white audience that included celebrities, socialites, and mob figures. Black performers were forbidden from mingling with patrons. She was entertainment. She was decoration. She was 16 years old. But inside the Cotton Club, something else was happening. Duke Ellington and Cab Calloway took her under their wing. The musicians called her Brooklyn and watched over her. When she replaced a sick performer in a Harold Arlen duet, singing became her way out. Not out of Harlem, but out of the chorus line, out of silence. Through the late 1930s, Horne built herself in pieces. She toured with Noble Sissle's orchestra, recorded for Decca, married a Pittsburgh political figure named Louis Jordan Jones, had 2 children, a daughter, Gail, and a son, Teddy, and then left the marriage when it became clear that her husband's world had no room for her ambitions. She joined Charlie Barnett's White Swing Band, one of the first black women to do so, and spent months sleeping on buses because hotels across the country refused to let her through the front door. The real shift came at Café Society downtown in Greenwich Village, New York's first integrated nightclub. There, she met the people who would reshape how she understood herself. Paul Robeson told her something she never forgot. He said she was a black woman first, and that everything she felt and experienced flowed from that. She also met Walter White, the executive secretary of the NAACP, and a circle that included Langston Hughes and Billie Holiday. For the first time, Horne wasn't just performing. She was connecting her talent to something larger. By early 1942, she was headlining at a club on the Sunset Strip, dazzling audiences that included Marlene Dietrich, Cole Porter, and Lana Turner. An MGM composer named Roger Edens saw her and insisted that producer Arthur Freed come hear her. The audition that was supposed to last 15 minutes ran for 2 hours. What happened next would change her life, just not in the way anyone promised. On January 31, 1942, the Pittsburgh Courier announced that MGM had signed Lena Horne to a 7-year contract starting at $350 a week. It was historic. She was one of the first black performers to receive a long-term studio deal in the sound era. Her salary would eventually rise to $1,000 a week from MGM, plus $6,500 a week from nightclub appearances, making her the highest-paid black entertainer in America. The contract came with a condition that was revolutionary on paper: Her father walked into Louis B. Mayer's office and told the head of the most powerful studio in Hollywood that his daughter would not play maids or servants. This was radical. Just 2 years earlier, Hattie McDaniel had won the first Oscar awarded to a black performer for playing exactly that kind of role in Gone with the Wind. Horne later recalled the moment with a mix of pride and disbelief. She said she didn't think Mayer had ever been spoken to by a black man like that. Walter White backed it up. He had been lobbying studios for years to stop casting black performers in degrading roles. He saw Horne as proof that a black woman could be presented as glamorous, intelligent, and desirable. He told her directly that she was the NAACP's test case. She reflected on that label years later with clear eyes. She called herself a pawn, but MGM had its own plans. Executives immediately suggested she pass as Latina. They told her she didn't look black, so why not just avoid the issue entirely? She refused. The studio's makeup department then brought in Max Factor to create a custom foundation shade called Light Egyptian, calibrated specifically to her complexion. That shade would later be applied to white actresses like Hedy Lamarr, Jean Crane, and Ava Gardner whenever they were cast in the exotic or mixed-race roles that Horne herself was denied. The irony was sharp enough to cut. They made her look presentable, then gave her appearance to someone else. Over the next decade, Lena Horne appeared in roughly 13 feature films. She received an actual acting role in exactly 2 of them, Cabin in the Sky and Stormy Weather, both released in 1943, both with all-black casts. In Stormy Weather, she performed the song that had been made famous by Ethel Waters, but Horne's version would become definitive. In every other picture, the arrangement was the same. She would stand against a pillar or a stylized backdrop, sing one number, exchange no dialogue with any other character, and disappear. This was by design. MGM deliberately structured her appearances so that her scenes could be physically removed from film prints shipped to Southern theaters. The studio wanted her glamour for audiences in the North and overseas. But for the segregated South, where exhibitors and local censors held enormous power, her presence was treated as optional. A man named Lloyd T. Binford, who chaired the Memphis Board of Censors for nearly 3 decades, personally ordered the removal of scenes featuring black performers from films shown in his city. The industry even coined a term for it. A film that had been censored this way was called Binfordized. Horne understood exactly what was happening. She once described herself as a butterfly pinned against the wall, singing her heart away in Hollywood. No one put her in a movie where she talked to anyone, she said. Where some thread of the story might be broken if she were cut. That wasn't neglect. That was architecture. Every frame of her career at MGM was built so that half the country could pretend she didn't exist. And the roles she was denied told an even more devastating story. The one that cut the deepest was Julie Laverne in MGM's 1951 production of Showboat. Julie is a mixed-race woman who passes as white, a role that Horne was born to play, that she had already performed in a segment of Till the Clouds Roll By in 1946. Jerome Kern and Oscar Hammerstein personally invited her to play Julie in the 1946 Broadway revival. MGM refused to release her from her contract. When the studio greenlit the film version, the production code's prohibition on depicting interracial relationships gave executives the cover they needed to pass her over entirely. The role went to her close friend Ava Gardner, a white woman who was made to rehearse using Horne's own vocal recordings. Gardner's singing voice was ultimately dubbed by another performer. Then for the soundtrack album, MGM recorded Horne imitating Gardner's interpretation. The result was a bizarre hall of mirrors. Gardner copying Horne, then Horne copying Gardner copying Horne. Both women were furious. Gardner said the studio's reasoning made her angry. For Horne's sake. It didn't stop there. The title role in Pinky, Elia Kazan's 1949 film about a light-skinned black woman passing as white, went to Jean Crane, a white actress who earned an Academy Award nomination for the performance. Kazan himself wasn't satisfied. He said Crane was a sweet girl, but she was like a Sunday school teacher. And the role of Tondelayo in White Cargo, a character described as an exotic seductress, went to Hedy Lamarr, wearing Horne's own light Egyptian makeup. Horne later told Johnny Carson with devastating precision, she said she guessed maybe she just wasn't sexy enough. Across town, another black actress named Dorothy Dandridge was facing similar barriers, fighting for roles that would eventually go to white performers or remain unmade entirely. The pattern was clear. Hollywood wanted what Lena Horne represented. It just didn't want Lena Horne. Off-screen, her isolation was just as precise. She was invited to Hollywood parties, but with the unspoken understanding that she would provide entertainment, not attend as a guest. White Hollywood kept her at arm's length, and within the black acting community, her refusal to play servant roles created resentment because it threatened the limited work available to other black performers. She described herself as suspended in mid-air between communities that each had reasons to hold her at a distance. In December 1947, she married Lena Horne, MGM's white Jewish musical director, in Paris. Because interracial marriage was illegal in 30 American states, including California, they kept the marriage secret for 3 years. When it became public in 1950, they received death threats from both sides of the color line. Horne later said she had initially married Horne partly to cross a barrier in show business, but that she grew to love him deeply. Her closest emotional bond, though, was with Billy Strayhorn, Duke Ellington's brilliant collaborator, the man who trained her voice. She once said he was the only man she ever loved. He was gay. The most important relationship of her life was one that could never become what she wanted. Then came the blacklist. Horne's associations with progressive organizations and her friendship with Paul Robeson made her a target during the Red Scare. Her name appeared in Red Channels, the anti-communist publication that listed suspected leftist entertainers, in 1950, and she was shut out of film, television, and radio for roughly 7 years. The House Un-American Activities Committee atmosphere made her politically radioactive. She survived by writing a carefully worded 12-page letter to Hollywood's most powerful anti-communist gatekeeper, distancing herself from communist influence without betraying Robeson. That letter, discovered decades later in a banker's box on a ranch, slowly reopened doors. But the damage was done. Hollywood had found yet another way to silence her. Locked out of film, Horne rebuilt her career on stages the studio system couldn't control. Her 1957 live album at the Waldorf Astoria became the biggest-selling record by a female artist in RCA Victor's history. She headlined the most prestigious rooms in America and Europe. That same year, she starred in the Broadway musical Jamaica, running 17 months, becoming the first African-American woman nominated for a Tony Award for Best Actress in a musical. But the moment that revealed who she really was underneath the glamour happened on a February night in 1960. At the Luau restaurant on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, an intoxicated man realized his table had been made to wait while Horne's was served. He said loud enough for the room to hear that she was just another black woman, except he used a word far worse. When Horne confronted him, he repeated it to her face. She threw an ashtray at his head, then a hurricane lamp, then another, then dishes, then conch shells. He sat bleeding from a gash above his eye. No charges were filed. The next day, letters of support poured in from across the country. She said something afterward that cut right to the heart of it. People assumed that because she was Lena Horne, she wasn't catching hell. That night cracked something open. The composed, elegant performer that Hollywood had tried to shrink into a decorative frame was done performing politeness for people who didn't deserve it. Horne threw herself into the civil rights movement with the same intensity she brought to a song. She worked with the National Council of Negro Women, performed at rallies for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and campaigned alongside Eleanor Roosevelt to push Congress toward anti-lynching legislation. On June 11, 1963, she shared a stage with Medgar Evers at a rally in Jackson, Mississippi. Hours later, Evers was assassinated in his own driveway. That August, she stood near Martin Luther King Jr. during the March on Washington, but her activism had deeper roots than the 1960s. During World War II, she had toured military bases performing for troops. At Fort Riley, Kansas, she arrived at a black mess hall to find the front rows filled with German prisoners of war. Black American soldiers, the men fighting for the country that wouldn't seat them, had been pushed to the back. She walked off the stage, went to the rear of the hall, and sang directly to them. MGM pulled her from the USO tour and called her a troublemaker. She kept performing for black soldiers at her own expense. Her photograph became the pinup of choice for black servicemen, the one image they could safely put on their walls without being challenged by white officers. She didn't just resist, she redirected. Every space that tried to shrink her became a space she expanded for someone else. By the late 1970s, Horne had endured losses that would have ended most careers permanently. Her son Teddy died of kidney failure in 1970. He was 30. Her husband Lena Horne died of a heart attack the following year. Her father had passed not long before. Three of the most important people in her life, gone within roughly 12 months. She withdrew from public life almost entirely. In 1978, she made a rare film appearance in The Wiz as Glinda the Good Witch, sharing the screen with Diana Ross and a young Michael Jackson. But it was her return to the stage that would define her final act. In the spring of 1981, at 63 years old, she walked onto the stage of the Nederlander Theater for what was supposed to be a 4-week run. The show was called Lena Horne, The Lady and Her Music. It ran for 333 performances, becoming the longest-running solo show in Broadway history at that time. She closed it on her 65th birthday. For 2 hours each night, she sang 34 songs spanning her career while telling the story that MGM had never allowed to reach the screen. She described the Cotton Club's exploitation. She talked about the light Egyptian makeup. She named the roles that had been handed to white women. She performed Stormy Weather twice, once subdued, once with a force that left audiences shaken. The New York Times called it an honest-to-God coup de théâtre. The show won a special Tony Award, a Drama Desk Award, and 2 Grammys, including Best Musical Show Album, produced by Quincy Jones. She toured 41 cities, then London and Stockholm. In 1984, she received the Kennedy Center Honors. In 1983, the NAACP awarded her the Spingarn Medal, previously given to Martin Luther King Jr., Langston Hughes, and Rosa Parks. At an age when most performers were looking back, Lena Horne was finally being seen clearly for the first time. Lena Horne died on May 9, 2010, Mother's Day, of congestive heart failure. She was 92. President Obama honored her refusal to perform for segregated audiences and called it a principled struggle she continued long after the troops returned home. In 2022, the Brooks Atkinson Theater on West 47th Street was renamed the Lena Horne Theater, the first Broadway house ever named for a black woman. Audra McDonald said Lena Horne was a woman of fierce talent, incredible strength, and profound conviction who broke down barriers with the utmost grace. But it was Horne's own words that said it best. Late in her life, she reflected on everything Hollywood had tried to make her, and everything it had refused to let her be. She said her identity was finally clear. She was a black woman. She was free. She no longer had to be a credit to her race. She didn't have to be a symbol. She didn't have to be an imitation of a white woman that Hollywood hoped she would become. Think about that for a moment. A woman who was one of the most famous performers in America spent decades being told that the best version of her was one the audience would never fully see. MGM built a system that could accommodate her beauty, but not her humanity, that could film her but make sure half the country never knew she was there. And she outlasted every single person who designed that system. She once described herself as a butterfly pinned against a wall, singing her heart away. But butterflies pinned to walls don't fight back. Lena Horne did. She fought with an ashtray in a Beverly Hills restaurant. She fought by standing next to Medgar Evers hours before he was killed. She fought by walking to the back of a military mess hall to sing to the soldiers her own country wouldn't seat. And she fought by stepping onto a Broadway stage at 63 and telling the story that the most powerful studio in the world had spent a decade making sure she could never tell. Hollywood never built another cage quite strong enough to hold someone like her again.